There are connections that begin loudly, through attraction, through intensity, through moments people can point to and say, that's where it started. But this never arrived like that. It arrived quietly. So quietly that I almost missed it at first. No dramatic shift, no sudden realization, just a slow alteration in the atmosphere around my thoughts. A subtle change in the way silence started to feel less empty whenever your presence existed somewhere inside my awareness. And that's what unsettled me the most. Not because it was unfamiliar, but because it felt familiar in a way nothing should feel between two people who were never supposed to reach this level of understanding. I've spent years existing behind controlled distance, learning how to separate what people see from what actually exists beneath the surface. Most interactions stay external. Most people never move beyond perception. They listen without understanding. They observe without truly seeing. And I let them. Because distance preserves clarity. Distance keeps things untouched by assumption. But you never approached me through assumption. You never tried to force understanding out of me. You never demanded explanations or searched for hidden meanings in every silence. You simply existed with enough awareness to recognize what was already there. And recognition, real recognition, is dangerous because it bypasses defenses without ever needing to challenge them directly. That's what happened here. You never pushed your way into my world. You never forced closeness. You never even asked for access. Somehow, without effort, you became part of a space I don't allow people to enter. And I still don't know when it happened. I only know that one day I noticed something had changed. My thoughts no longer moved the same way they used to. My mind would pause, as if waiting for something invisible to align with it. Certain moments felt incomplete until I imagined how you would interpret them. Even silence started carrying shape, as if your presence had integrated itself into the background of my internal world without permission. That's not attachment. Attachment is emotional. This feels structural, like something in the architecture of my thinking rearranged itself to make space for you before I consciously realized it was happening. And that realization has consequences. Because once someone reaches that level inside you, distance stops functioning the same way. You can avoid someone physically. You can stop speaking. You can create silence between conversations. But you cannot create distance from someone who already exists inside the way you process reality itself. That's the part people don't understand about connections like this. They think
Mhm.
closeness is measured through time, through labels, through shared history. But some people arrive with a kind of recognition that ignores all of those rules. They step into your awareness already familiar, already aligned, already understood, in ways logic cannot fully explain. And the frightening part is how natural it feels when it happens. Because this should feel impossible. It should feel unstable. It should trigger resistance inside me. Yet instead, it feels precise, accurate, like discovering something that was always there beneath the surface, waiting to be noticed. I've replayed countless moments trying to identify where this truly began. Was it in the way you understood things I never explained? Was it in the way your silence matched mine perfectly without discomfort? Was it the way you never tried to simplify me into something easier to understand? Maybe it was all of it. Maybe the truth is that this was never built through a single moment. Maybe it formed gradually beneath my awareness until one day I realized you had already crossed a line no one else had ever crossed before. Not emotionally, mentally, internally, structurally. And now I'm left facing something I cannot easily categorize. Because once someone changes the baseline of your awareness, everything else starts feeling slightly different by comparison. Conversations feel thinner. Interactions feel less precise. The world itself seems quieter in the wrong way, as if most people are operating on a frequency that no longer fully reaches you. That's what your presence has done. It hasn't overwhelmed me. It hasn't consumed me. It has simply recalibrated something fundamental inside me. And recalibration is permanent. Once your mind adapts to a certain level of understanding, it cannot fully return to what existed before. That's why this matters more than I wanted it to. Not because I planned for it, not because I chased it, but because, despite every instinct I've trusted for years, I never stopped it from happening. I observed it, I allowed it, quietly, which means some part of me recognized your place in my life before I consciously admitted it to myself. And now the truth sits there, undeniable. You are no longer separate from the way I think. You've become part of the process itself, part of the lens, part of the structure. And once someone reaches that level inside you, they stop being temporary. They stop being optional. They become part of your internal reality, whether you choose to acknowledge it or not. I think what unsettles me most is not the depth of this connection, but the absence of resistance inside me toward it. Every pattern I've ever followed says I should have stepped back by now. I should have rebuilt distance, restored control, reestablished the boundaries that have always protected the internal order of my life. That's what I do when something gets too close. I analyze it until I can reduce it into something manageable. I separate emotion from perception. I create clarity where uncertainty begins forming. But none of those mechanisms worked with you. Not because you broke through them forcefully, but because you existed in a way that made them unnecessary. And that changes everything, because I've realized something difficult to admit. I don't fear closeness itself. I fear distortion. I fear being misunderstood deeply enough that parts of me become reshaped by someone else's interpretation. That's why I've always stayed unreadable. Not to create mystery, not to maintain power, but to preserve accuracy. Once people think they understand you, they begin projecting onto you. They stop seeing what's actually there and start interacting with a version constructed from their own needs, expectations, fears, or assumptions. Most people don't even realize they're doing it. But you didn't do that. You observed without rewriting me. You listened without forcing meaning where none existed. You allowed contradictions to remain intact instead of trying to resolve them into something simpler. And that level of perception is rare enough to feel almost impossible, because most people need certainty to feel comfortable. They need definitions, explanations, emotional clarity. But you never demanded clarity from me. You let understanding exist before explanation. That's why I kept noticing you in ways I couldn't ignore. Not because you were loud, but because your awareness was precise. There's, there were moments where you responded to thoughts I hadn't fully spoken yet. Moments where your silence carried more understanding than other people's words ever could. Moments where I realized you weren't trying to reach me from the outside. You were already seeing from somewhere internal. That's when this stopped feeling coincidental. Patterns repeat for a reason. Alignment forms through structure, not chance. And the structure between us matches too closely to dismiss. I see it in the way we interpret things beneath the surface level, in the way we notice details other people overlook, in the way silence becomes communication instead of absence. Most people fear silence because silence forces them to confront themselves. They rush to fill it with noise, reassurance, explanations, distractions. But with you, silence feels complete, not empty, not awkward, complete, like meaning exists independently from language itself. And that level of understanding alters something fundamental inside a person. It changes the way connection functions. It changes the way trust forms. Because trust isn't built through promises or vulnerability alone. It's built through accuracy, through being seen clearly without distortion, through realizing someone can understand you without needing to simplify you first. That's what you gave me without ever trying to. And now I'm facing the consequence of that reality. Because once you experience a connection built on that level of recognition, ordinary interactions stop feeling sufficient. They still exist. They still function. But something inside you notices the difference immediately. The lack of depth, the lack of precision, the absence of alignment. And I hate admitting that because it means this has already changed my standards internally. You've altered the way my mind measures understanding itself. Not intentionally, not through influence, through presence alone. That's what impact truly is. Not forcing change, but creating it naturally through alignment strong enough that resistance becomes irrelevant. I think that's why I haven't walked away. Not because I'm incapable of leaving. I've walked away from countless things without hesitation. But this doesn't feel like something external I can simply remove from my life. It feels integrated already, embedded into the framework of my perception in ways distance cannot undo. Even if we